Alright, let's fucking do it. Hello, and welcome to Talk About It, the official podcast series of Phenomenology Club, hosted by myself, Buttress, the founder and leader of Phenomenology Club, also known as Bethany of New Jersey, a woman from New Jersey. Some of you know that I've stated on various venues that I don't really like to get too political on Phenomenology Club for various reasons. I mean, for one, I am just personally so averse to this culture that I feel exists on YouTube, especially, where like all of these people, from all sides, well, how many sides are there? Whatever, from opposite poles of the political spectrum, just kind of like deem themselves experts on something because they have some strong opinions and just, assert these opinions endlessly into YouTube. And many of them gain like a huge audience just for like, going on these long winded explanations for their own political opinions. And I really am averse to this culture. For one, I feel like it creates an environment where people are encouraged to like not really care too much about diving deep. Like all people want to interact with, it seems like, is the ideology, like, which is important, obviously, because I think ideology is how you interface with a lot of these issues. Like a thing like feminism, for example, which I'm about to go on my own long-winded rant about. Like, you have to interface with it on an ideological level if you're going to go any deeper than that. But I think going deeper is essential, and this is sort of my problem with this culture of YouTube activism. I don't even know what you'd call it. Because it's basically just these people, like, what's the hot topic this week? I'm going to go on a long-winded rant about it. Even though I don't have a degree in anything, I'm just some guy that, like, lives on a live Twitch stream and, like, reads the New York Times every day, maybe. You know what I mean? It's just like, meh. If I want to get, like, political information, because, I mean, first of all, I don't have a hard time forming my own opinions. I like to engage in discourse with other people. But, like, I don't really need anybody to, like, give me an opinion on something like, I don't know, feminism, for example, really. And when I want to challenge my own opinions, like, I feel like I have to engage with the source material that you can't get from these sort of YouTube people. You have to actually read about political theory. You have to read about economics. You have to read about, like, literal history and specific information, all this shit. I don't know. I'm ranting. But you know what I mean? I hope you relate to this. I'm very averse to this culture, so I'm very afraid of becoming one of these people. I never want to be like them. I hate them. I despise them. I do not wish to be like them. But beyond this, the purpose and the focus of this channel in general is to be philosophical and more specifically phenomenological, because for me, much of the utility in phenomenology and in philosophy is that it equips us as individuals with essentially a toolkit with which we can create our own opinions. I don't want to give people my opinion. I mean, of course I do, and I do this all the time, but I'm mostly interested in engaging fundamentals, because this is what I do as an individual thinker too. If I want to really investigate an idea, of course at first I'll interface with it in a more superficial way. Maybe I'll engage with the popular ideology surrounding some social conflict, but then I start to think, like, what are the underlying ideas? And I think that if you start from the underlying ideas, that this process is also very effective. You don't necessarily need to whittle down. I think you can also start from what is foundational. And for me, I feel like it's a good way to share ideas with people where I think that maybe we would have like some conflict if I just wanted to dive into like the upper tiers of the argument, you know? When you agree on the fundamentals, it's easier to agree on the specific arguments we build with these fundamentals. But despite all this, I am a woman, as I have stated, and as such, I feel like I do have some unique perspectives that perhaps some people would be interested in hearing about, because for one, people have expressed to me that they are interested in hearing me go on about it, even though I'm hesitant to do so. But, you know, I think feminism in particular, too, is really an interesting socio-political movement. I mean, for many reasons, but for me, like, it's very interesting for how new it is, you know? This is a very new movement in the history of the world. And of course, when you look through the history of the world, like, there's been all sorts of smaller feminist movements, but it really wasn't until the last century, the turn of the 19th going into the 20th century, that there really started to be some sort of like global mobilizing around feminist ideas and getting feminist legislation passed and stuff. So I think that because this is true, that because feminism is such a recent phenomena, that reminds me, I'm trying to use phenomena more grammatically correctly. It's a phenomenon, right? Singular. Can I forget it? I'm just gonna keep doing what I've been doing. It's such an interesting phenomena, because you know, a lot of the theory is still very new. It's definitely in like its infancy stages in many ways, and this personally brings me much comfort as a feminist that is always upset, deeply upset. Not really. I think I'm okay right now. But you know, it's exciting how this movement is in many ways new, and especially when it comes to like feminist theory and philosophy of feminism. Like a lot of these ideas are still being developed, and a lot of novel ideas have just not even really reached an audience yet, because they are so new. So anyway, I think that, you know, I feel a little more confident in trying to speak about these things and trying to offer some insights. But anyway, I still want to try to attempt to do this through some sort of philosophical lens, obviously, because this is Phenomenology Club. And not long ago, somebody asked me if I could do basically a crash course to the waves of feminism through the lens of phenomenology. And at first I was like, I kind of thought this sounded like an absurd request. Like, huh? What? What do you want me to do? I didn't understand the question, but then I thought about it, you know. This is actually probably a very useful exercise for those of you who listen to this series. And especially those of you who have heard the What the Fuck is Phenomenology episode, the introductory episode to this series, you know that much of what I try to do here is investigate language and investigate concepts and find what is most essential to them, because I think that the only way that we can ever find agreement in a meaningful way, obviously, is by defining the terms of our arguments and clarifying our language, you know, because language is really the only way we have to interface with any of these arguments. And in that way, it's really not arbitrary, especially when you're doing a thing like philosophy and trying to present a philosophical argument. We need to find agreement. And when there is none, we should create some. But I think that the most effective way of finding agreement especially when it comes to words and definitions, is finding what is most essential about anything, you know? And when it comes to feminism in particular, I mean, a lot of people already know that I am someone that feels like I exist amidst a conflict, you know? I definitely am opposed to a lot of the current narratives in mainstream feminism and all this. So I think that actually doing this exercise, trying to do some phenomenological reductions together, Husserlian style, I think that this could be a useful exercise in also illuminating exactly what these kinds of conflicts that historically have arisen between groups of feminists and also between people like myself and what I perceive to be mainstream feminism, which I feel very much opposed to. So let's fucking do it. Anyway, also, let me just say, look at my creative little title. I called this Observations, Crashing the Feminist Wave Function. And some of you nerds in the audience might know that in quantum mechanics, wave function collapse occurs when a wave function reduces to a single eigenstate due to interaction with the external world. This interaction is called an observation. And of course, this is very relevant to phenomenology, right? Because phenomenology asserts that all knowledge is empirical, just as natural science asserts that all natural is empirical. And what empirical means is that it comes to us by way of what is observable. Clearly, what is observable to us as individuals. So, all we can really do is share our observations and compare and contrast them with each other and try to find this mutual agreement. So let's try to do it. So I think that the first thing we have to do, clearly, is define feminism, right? What the fuck is feminism? Let's ask the dictionary. Of course, I have my own idea, okay? But keeping in line with what we do here, we usually use Merriam-Webster's dictionary as a point of reference. So let's ask Merriam, and then I will give my feedback. Merriam-Webster, ready? 2 definitions for feminism, a noun. Number 1. The theory of the political, economic, and social equality of the sexes. Whamp, whamp, whamp. What do we think? Do we agree with this? Start thinking. Start giving me some thoughts. Definition number 2. Organized activity on behalf of women's rights and interests. Now, personally, this is something I align with much more. Oh my god, I have to pee all of a sudden. I peed right before. See, this is women problems. Give me 30 seconds. I'll sing a song from far away. You ready? My toilet's like not even that far behind me. Give me 30 seconds. Love is a song that never ends. One simple key repeating, like the horn of a heavenly choir, lost wind on like the dawn. Love is a song that never ends. Life may be swift and fleeting. Love, sweet music goes on. Boom, I'm back. Anyone who recognizes that song, shout outs to you. Only real ones. Real recognize real. Anyway, so, what was I just saying? Oh yeah. Feminism. Let me read it one more time again. This is what Merriam-Webster says. Number 1. The theory of the political, economic, and social equality of the sexes. And number 2, organized activity on behalf of women's rights and interests. What do you guys think about this? Because I think already we have a point of contention that I could begin to go on a long-winded rant about, and I'm not sure if here's the place to do it, so I'll feel it out. But I think that the difference between these two definitions might appear kind of not incredibly distinct to people just reading these, but I think there's a different idea between the two of them, and the difference between these two definitions already illuminates a conflict that exists in feminism, especially modern feminism. Maybe you can find it. Let me read this one more time. Think about what is fundamentally different about these two definitions. Are you ready? I'll read it slowly. Thinking caps on. Ready? The theory of the political, economic, and social equality of the sexes. I'll read it one more time for you. The theory of the political, economic, and social equality of the sexes. Okay? Got it? Now this is the second definition. Organized activity on behalf of women's rights and interests. Organized activity on behalf of women's rights and interests. Does anyone feel that they have identified the key difference between these two definitions and the one that has resulted in much conflict in discussions about feminism? Maybe you have and you just can't make your way to the keyboard. I don't see anybody saying that they have, I'll tell you. The fundamental difference between these two definitions is the first one puts forth the idea that feminism is concerned with the equality of the sexes. And the second definition makes no such allusion to a thing like equality, whatever that fucking means in this instance, especially, who knows. But it says that it's organized activity on behalf of women's rights and interests. And personally, I much more align with this definition. That feminism is about women's rights. It's not about equality. Equality, I mean, first of all, I'm not sure when, maybe some of you know, when people really started to flock around this idea that feminism is about equality between men and women. I don't feel this way at all. It's about women's rights. It kind of seems like people felt the need to get men to be a little bit more on board with it, to be like, it's not about women, doing this or that. It's about equality for all of us. It's great for all of us, Feminism is for men too. It's about equality. No, bitch, it's not. It's about women. That's why it's called feminism. It's not called humanism or everyoneism. It's called feminism because it's about women's rights. Whether or not ultimately you think the goal of women's rights has been fully actualized once we reach a state of conditions that could be called equal, that's ultimately inconsequential. But for me, I think the framing is very important because personally, I don't know. I don't know when it will truly be, when women's rights have fully reached this goal. Because for me, it's kind of like the concept of equality is kind of troubling in and of itself to me. Because in many ways, I feel like a lot of the problems that exist for women is because we are technically seen as equal under law. And I think that we get left behind in many ways because the government doesn't pay attention to us as women. There's not provisions made for us as women, To think of a thing like abortion, which I'll go into a discussion about in a bit, this is a perfect example, I think, of the problem and why feminism needs to be considered the fight for women's rights and not the fight for equality. Because look at abortion laws. We are granted the rights to abortion because we are covered under a right that also exists for men. Women don't have the specific right to abortion. Women have the right to medical privacy, which is a thing that our government argues belongs to everybody. And that's why we get to have rights to abortion, because it's everybody's equal right to have a right to medical privacy. And this I perceive as a problem. I think that abortion will never be a thing that we as women cannot worry about until we have specific laws for us as women that we get to have them, you know? I don't think that being covered by this other law, this right to medical privacy, I don't think that offers us enough protection, you know? So this is my problem with that. But let me not go crazy about that right now. What were we doing? We're trying to define feminism. So this says organized activity on behalf of women's rights and interests. That's the definition I align more with. But do I think it's totally accurate? No, not necessarily. Because what does organized activity mean? I think you have to add like a descriptor here. I would say that it would... I think that you should add a descriptor like it's organized socio-political activity on behalf of women's rights and interests. Because when you don't clarify that this is a political movement and a socio-political movement, I think that that can become kind of lost in translation. And, you know, people will say, well, it's not necessarily like about like law or anything like this. But I would disagree. I think that really, like, as this is a political movement, you have to integrate that into the definition. So, do y'all agree with me? I would say that feminism is organized socio-political activity on behalf of women's rights and interests. Boom! I'm moving on. So, if you disagree with me, tell me about it. So the first wave of feminism, first of all, let's describe it, and then let's talk about whether or not we think it meets this goal of feminism that we have just defined for ourselves, what feminism is. I feel like I'm going to be here for a minute. Also, I want to say, like I was kind of saying earlier, I am not an expert. I am not a historian. I am learning about the history of feminism literally as we go on. And it's honestly crazy to me. I mean, I consider myself a pretty educated person, like a self-educated person, and I consider myself pretty intellectually astute in many ways, but I don't think I've ever felt so intimidated by having to confront how much knowledge I lack in any topic than I have with learning about the history of feminism. Like, just reading Wikipedia articles about the history of feminism, I learned so much that I'm like, wow. It's fucking nuts that I never learned any of this shit, first of all, but also that I never pursued it on my own. Like, what the fuck have you been doing, bitch? Huh? This shit affects your life. What have I been doing? I haven't not engaged with the history of feminism in any meaningful way until pretty recently in my life. So having said that, also, you know, if any of you are historians and know things, please tell me stuff. Please tell us and tell us where we can learn about this stuff. But I swear to you, if you're somebody that like hasn't really engaged with this, even just go read some of these Wikipedia shits and be prepared to get your mind blown. Because, for example, now let's start speaking about first wave feminism. I had no idea that first wave feminism, I mean, I had always learned about it as essentially just like women fighting for the right to vote, you know, the suffragettes fighting for the right to vote. Like, that's, I mean, I'm sure we learned other stuff, but I really don't remember much. But, like, reading about this shit, it's kind of crazy how much stuff happened before we eventually won this right to vote. For example, like, beginning in the late 19th century, women were slowly winning the right to vote on a state level in all of their individual states. Like, I didn't know this. I thought that the right to vote was only instilled on a federal level, and that they won this right to vote in 1920. That was it. Women couldn't vote before, and now they can vote. I had no idea that many states had already granted them the right to vote, and that this was a long process of trying to, get all these states to pass it. But at the federal level, it became illegal to deny women the right to vote. So that's cool. That's something I learned. The first wave is defined ultimately as this period. By the way, I didn't even say when it was. 19th and early 20th century, and it's described as having ended in 1920 when we won the federal right to vote. But I'll tell you why in a minute too. I think that might not be entirely sufficient of a history. Also, when we're describing the waves of feminism and feminism as this more mobilized movement historically, we're also describing things that happen primarily in the Western world. And it wasn't only in the Western world, but a lot of it was. A lot of the mobilization and the movements was in the Western world. And then, of course, in the Western world, there's separate demographics doing separate things. Like, the history of black women's feminism in America looks nothing like the history of white women's feminism. And this is another history that I think people are criminally underfamiliar with. Like, the first wave is generally said to have ended in 1920, but this sort of ignores the fact, for example, that from like the 1920s to the 1940s, black feminists were like incredibly active. They were doing all sorts of things. A lot of them were becoming communists. They were working on like union building. They were creating theory and in many ways laying the groundwork for what would eventually become things like intersectionality theory and stuff like this. So they were incredibly active during this time period, and I think that it's incumbent on us in many ways to consider this when thinking about even how we describe the first wave. When did it end? Did it really end in 1920, or did it end for a certain demographic in 1920? But also another thing I didn't know, and this will come up in a bit. Did you know, this was probably the craziest thing I learned. Did you know that in the late 18th century, there was the first movement in America for sexual liberation? And it was not led by women at all. Women pretty much had nothing to do with it. It was led by men. It was this male-led movement for sexual liberation. They had all these kinds of writings and stuff, which, excluded women. Funny. And it was basically a lot of men arguing for, like, why they should be able to have sex in brothels before they're married and not be judged for it and stuff, It was a very male-driven movement. And it's kind of funny that whenever we talk about things like sexual liberation, we, like, always frame it about being, like, for women and stuff. But I think that looking at this history and how it came about, I think it was called, what was its name? It had a stupid name. What's your stupid fucking name, you horny guy movement? Horny guy movement. I don't fucking know, some dumb shit. Horny guy movement, fighting for sexual liberation, which basically was just a bunch of men, making arguments for why they should be able to boink whenever the fuck they want and not be judged. So, great for them. And another thing that's really important, I think, to talk about here, too, women were fighting for things like property rights. They were fighting for things like having their own spaces at work, like restrooms for women, so that they could enter the workforce more easily. They had to create spaces for themselves that didn't exist, where they could be safe and also, take care of their womanly duties, whatever the fuck, without worrying about some fucking man assaulting them, all this. And land, right to land, I said. And also there was a big movement where basically all these states were passing anti-contraception laws, because this first wave of feminism also is when you start to see the beginning of like reproductive rights with the development of birth control, hormonal birth control. And with the development of birth control, a lot of states were like, fuck that, you can't have birth control, bitches. So, a lot of them were starting to pass oral or anti contraception laws, and women were actively fighting this during this time. And I believe were largely unsuccessful, because birth control was basically banned up until like the 70s. See, I don't know this shit. We need a historian. I need like a little person on a typewriter. Anyway, read about it. So anyway, let's let's summarize, because I need to talk about other stuff. I want to interface with the ideology. I'm not a historian. I'm not here to give you a history lesson. But what do we think? Do you think that first wave feminism, it's pretty safe to say that the goals and the achievements of first wave feminism is feminist? Feminist, according to our definition, where we said it was the socio-political organized activity on behalf of women's rights and interests. I mean, personally, I would say yes. I don't think that there could be much contention here. Like, the women were literally fighting for all sorts of, like, legal changes and all this, They were fighting for very specific things. It wasn't, like, the right to vote, It's like, can you really say that you can make an argument that that's not a thing women should care about and won't liberate us, and believe it or not, there were women back then too that were on some pick-me shit that were like, fuck all these feminists telling me what I want. I don't need to vote. I'm happy staying home with the kids. I don't care. That's feminist. It's feminist to do whatever I want. Like, can you imagine all the ridiculous shit we have to deal with now? Can you imagine these bitches just don't even want the right to vote? Bitch, give me a fucking break. These women have always existed and they'll always exist. And it's not just like, it's not a woman's problem, In any community of people fighting for their rights, there's always going to be some sort of group of people that are like, I don't care, I'm happy. I don't give a fuck. Anyway, I would say that yes, this aligns with the goal of feminism. Who cares? Let's get to the controversy. So, again, 1920s to 1940s is a very active period for black women's feminism in particular. Oh, and also I should say that also in the late 18th century, or 19th century, yes, I hate centuries because it's always one later. The 19th century, also there was a lot of very active black women's feminists. Sojourner Truth's famous speech, Am I a Woman, or Am I Not a Woman? I think that was like 1870 or something, and around this time there were other women like her, and I believe Ida B. Wells and others who were already laying the foundations of black feminism in America. So they were also very active during this other time too, when I was describing how women are going about state by state trying to get the right to vote. So anyway, is it feminism? I say so. Great. We just phenomenologically reduced the first wave of feminism, and I concluded it's feminist. Boom. Good for me. Now. Let's get fucked up. Are you ready? So, enter the second wave. First of all, the second wave of feminism, the presence of it and the emergence of it ultimately defines the first wave in and of itself. Because, of course, women that were like the suffragettes and, Sojourner Truth and all them, they weren't like, okay, this is the first wave. They didn't make such a distinction, obviously. I mean, why would they? They started this movement. They probably didn't even conceptualize that there would be a thing that we call waves of feminism. They were just fucking doing what they had to do. But then, in the, what year was it? I think it was like 68 it said on this one thing that I read. Where is it? It was about the woman who coined the term, Martha Lear, writing in the New York Times Magazine. She first coined the term first wave feminism in March 1968, and it says that at the same time she also used the term second wave feminism. So I'm not sure if she's the first woman to ever say second wave feminism, but kind of sounds like it. But the start of second wave feminism is basically generally said to be when Betty Friedan published her book in 1963, which was like wildly successful, called The Feminine Mystique, which is basically a book where she had been commissioned by some sort of researchers. I believe it was a college that asked her to like do some sort of a survey of like all these different women, I believe mostly housewives, and she found in doing this research that a lot of women were expressing to her that they were very discontent with their reality as housewives and of caretakers, and a lot of them had much higher aspirations than just this life of essentially domestic servitude. I mean, the early 1960s is still obviously not still coming on the tail of the 1950s, where, like, you know, any of us who have seen commercials and ads from then, it's like being a woman. Oh my God, it's like you're a living mannequin, you know? Like, make sure dinner's ready when Brad comes home. Like, don't raise your voice too loud. Like, it's like, it's scary shit, you know? Obviously. So, fuck all that. Some Leave It to Beaver hellscape. So, of course, you know, many of these women were discontent, and they felt that they weren't allowed to voice this kind of discontentment. And this book exploded, essentially. And as it did, all other types of feminist movements also exploded. There was a huge explosion in black feminism, a huge explosion in lesbian feminism. All kinds of rights were being fought for and won. Things like, you know, laws concerning like bringing your kid to the workplace, birth control. Birth control's crazy. This is a thing that I didn't know until I looked it up. You want to get fucked up? Hold on, let me just find the year. I didn't know this. And it's crazy because so many women, like my grandma was alive when this happened. She didn't tell me. Why didn't you tell me, Grandma? That shit was so crazy. Like, birth control was like illegal for single women up until like 73 or something. It was like after Roe vs. Wade. Like, bitch, are you kidding me? The fuck? The fuck? While I look that up, A. Quinn just asked, is feminism relevant to men at all? Well, I mean, you share half the globe with us, don't you? I would hope it's relevant to you. Is it? You tell me. Are you a man? Is it relevant to you? I would hope that you're interested in such things, but I don't put any burden on them. I think feminism should not expect men to do anything, if that's what you're asking me, because I think that that's just stupid. It's foolish, bad strategy. Why do we assume that we can convince men to, like, first of all, understand exactly what we're trying to achieve and help us achieve it, you know? That's not to, like, speak ill of men or anything and say you're, like, evil or something, but it's just, like, I can't assume that you are going to, like, align with the goals of feminism the way I will. Know what I'm saying? Sorry about it. It's my perspective. That's that phenomenology. Where's these fucking birth control laws? I'm sick of it. Birth control, birth control, birth control. No. What, bitch? The fuck? It's probably called contraception. Ugh. Do I really gotta find this right now? I'm sorry. Hold on. So Roe vs. Wade is when? I already spoke about that a little bit. I already did that rant. Roe vs. Wade, 1973. Okay, there we go. You know, where we are granted the right to abortion because of an umbrella right, the right to medical privacy, not because we're really granted the right to abortion, which does not exist, women and men who care. Stay woke, okay? Like, this right can be taken from us at any time, and we should all know by now that many people want to take it away from us. So you should definitely care about that and stay on your fucking toes. Where's the contraception laws? God damn it. You motherfuckers. You motherfuckers. If you don't show me these motherfucking contraception motherfucking laws. Here we go. Finally. Jesus Christ. So Roe vs. Wade was 1973. 1972, there's a case called Eisenstadt versus Baird. What are these, two Germans fighting for birth control? I don't know what's up with this. I should read it. I'm sure my mind will be blown if I do. It was a United States Supreme Court case that established the right of unmarried people to possess contraception on the same basis as married couples. So up until 1972, you could not get birth control unless you were a married woman. Isn't that crazy? 1972, bro. That's not long ago at all. When was The Shining made? That's like my marker for the 70s. Oh, 1980? Damn it. All right. What movie came out around 1972 that we can all use to be like, wow, that wasn't that long ago? It's only 8 years before The Shining. Same fucking deal. What's another 8 years? 1972 is not long ago at all that single women were able to have access to birth control. Like, that is crazy. And people don't even know this history. Like, I feel like you learn that birth control was invented or oral contraceptives were invented in, like, 1918 or something, and you just kind of assume, like, and then we had it. Like, no, bitch, we didn't have it. We made it, and then they were like, you can't take that until 1972. And they're like, okay, actually you can. Like, what? And also, I've randomly heard from, like, certain older women, like, yeah, they couldn't even take out, like, bank loans, lines of credit, without, like, being married or having, I think if you were single, maybe you could have, like, your father's signature. But, many women weren't even able to have their own bank account, like, I don't know if it's a state thing or what. If any of you are historians, please tell me. But, things like this are, like, so not long ago at all. It reminds me at the beginning of the fucking Handmaid's Tale when they, like, took everyone's bank account stuff. Like, what the fuck? The fuck? Imagine not being able to go take out money at the bank because you're a woman. Not even long ago. That sounds like that should have been happening at the turn of the century when all that other stuff was going on. No, this is like the 70s. Bitch, the fuck? Excuse me? No. Anyway, let's start getting deeper. So with this boom of feminism, all these different kinds of feminism, we have lesbian feminism, black feminism, we even have Christian feminism, which is just crazy. Like Christian bitches that were like, yeah, women. I'm pretty sure they were anti-abortion too. So it's not like, I don't think they found a lot of solidarity with all the other women in the movement, but they did exist. And I would say that they probably were feminist in many ways, So that's like crazy. There were all these different sorts of factions of feminism. And here is where we see some sort of conflict start to really emerge, and to think about like whether or not the second wave in general aligns with our goals. Or aligns with the definition of feminism that we agreed on. I would say that a lot of the things we're describing obviously, achieve the goal of feminism. We have things like women gaining the right, quote unquote, to abortion, to contraceptives. All different sorts of laws were passed in this time period, I would say that these things align with the goal of feminism, but I think where it become ambiguous is when you have all these sort of warring factions of women coming from all different angles with different ideas about how feminism should be enacted, but then also beginning to have ideas about what feminism is in the first place. This is where we start to, I think, have less of a clear answer as to whether or not all of the narratives that emerge from these conflicts that begin in the second wave are truly feminist in and of themselves. And this is a popular misconception. I see a lot of people speak about third wave feminism as being a thing that is liberal feminism, in the sense that it's choice-based and individual-based, and they act like this is just the third wave. And that second wave was mostly like radical feminism, which a lot of these movements were in the second wave. But that, I think, is a misconception, because liberal feminism and this idea of like individual choice-based feminism actually begins in the second wave. And the conflict that emerges here is actually so strong and so intense that it almost effectively ends the second wave, because women cannot come to an agreement. And it's famously called the feminist sex wars, because a lot of this conflict existed around these ideas where women are saying, you have a group of women saying, basically, whatever I want as a woman is feminist, you know? Well, I won't ascribe all of that to them. I mean, to talk about like sexual liberation, because this is like an idea that becomes really relevant in the third wave, and this is where I myself have a lot of conflict, you know. I think that this idea is contentious for very good reason, obviously, because historically, I mean, you look at women's sexuality, what kinds of things we're allowed to express, how we're allowed to behave sexually, you know, what we're, if we're even allowed to take pleasure in sex. I mean, look at all of the various cultures around the world that do things like female genital mutilation. I mean, what is the purpose of doing this if not to remove all pleasure from the act of sex for women that undergo this horrible procedure, you know? Like, this is a thing that is so policed, not only in the Western world, and not only in like specific demographics in the Western world. I would say that this is a thing prevalent in about every fucking culture, even cultures that call themselves matriarchies. You know, they're not exempt from this. Like, this is a thing, I would say, just about every woman has experienced the policing of her own sexuality. So I think that because this is true, of course, many women align with this idea that we want to be able to express our own sexuality however the fuck we see fit, you know? If I want to fuck 20 dudes in one night, I want to suck all their fucking dicks and show them on my butthole, then I'm gonna, bitch. And this is how I feel. I absolutely feel this way. That is my right to do whatever the fuck I want. And, you know, lots of women have put forth this argument, especially in like things like music. I mean, Christina Aguilera and like Lil Kim and them, they have anthems about this very idea. Why can a dude, you know, hook up with 15 people in a week, and if I do it, I'm a fucking hoe? I don't think so. So, you know, this is an important idea, and you can see why it's important to women, especially, obviously, because we're trying to become more equal to men in this regards with the expression of our sexuality and such. But oh, Kill Alters. Hey, Bonnie or Nico, whichever one. I love you, hoes. So, but this is my problem with the narratives that have emerged from this idea that I just described to you, that women should be able to express our sexuality however the fuck we want. My problem is that we already exist essentially in a catch-22. The problem is not simply that women have been denied our sexuality and our sexual expression and our freedom to, you know, have sex with whoever, do whatever, be nude, do this or do that. The problem also exists on the opposite end of this theoretical spectrum, you know, where we're also shamed for things like being modest, quote unquote, you know. We're shamed for being vanilla. If you don't want to be sexual, you're also shamed, you know. You're shamed for being a prude, you're frigid, you're this, you're that. So it's like, that's true, right? And that's obviously a problem too. And then this other problem on the other side of the spectrum, that if you're overly sexual, you're a problem. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, why would we then choose only one of these issues to address and frame the entire problem through the lens of? I don't think that that's adequate if the goal of feminism is a thing like the liberation of all women, the political liberation of all women. I don't think that it's going to be adequate here if we decide that the way that women will become sexually liberated is if we focus on being able to be more openly sexual. And I think it's not a coincidence that if you notice, men seem to love this side of the spectrum. That we're all becoming sexually liberated. I mean, wouldn't you say? I have never seen men become so enthusiastic about a feminist narrative. I don't even know if I could say, look, I love men, by the way. I know I might sound like being like whatever. I love men. I don't even say men are trash, even though I sympathize with what that came out of, which is something I'll tell you real quick. See, I could just rant forever. This is why I don't want to talk about feminism, because I could go forever. But a lot of people don't know this. The men are trash hashtag. This originated in South Africa, and it became a hashtag because there was a black lesbian activist that essentially she got lit on fire and murdered in the streets of South Africa, and she was targeted because she was a feminist and a lesbian. I don't want to say this if it's incorrect, but I believe that she might have been raped, and this is a thing that lesbians have to fear in all countries, but especially in South Africa, where corrective rape is a tactic often employed on lesbians. This is what it's the idea is, like, we're punishing these lesbians, like, and it's so fucked up. But, I don't think a lot of Americans even know this, so that's part of why I've shared it with you. It makes me see it differently, because I've seen a lot of people complain about this men are trash hashtag or whatever, and if it came out of nothing, I think I might agree, just because I don't like the fucking hashtagging and, like, condensing of these grand narratives into these tiny fucking 3-word mantras. I think that that's largely a byproduct of capitalism, and it also just, like, completely kills discourse in many ways, because if you notice, a lot of times when people try to have discussions about things, a lot of people just answer with these fucking little mantras, like, oh, I already have the answer, I don't even have to talk about it, I got my fucking little 3-word mantra, I'm just gonna throw it at you, shut the fuck up, that's my new whatever. But what was I just saying? I was saying that men are cool, I love men, I don't think men are trash, but I also think that that helped raise awareness for a serious issue in South Africa. South Africa has an amazing feminist movement going on right now, but it's amazing because they're combating an insane problem. I mean, look it up. Not long ago, there was a young woman that was raped and murdered there, and she was like, I don't know, like 15, and a lot of people mobilized around this. But anyway, I'm talking about sexual liberation. Like, yeah, for me, it's inadequate to just say that, okay, we're going to correct this problem of women's sexuality being denied us by embracing this idea that women need to be sexually open. Because, for one, I think it's suspicious, like I was just saying, right? That's why I went on this rant. I think it's suspicious that men love this narrative, and like I was just trying to say before I went on my rant, I have never seen a man, I don't think ever, pretty much, maybe like I could count on one hand, like really get enthusiastic about any sort of feminist narrative. Anyone, even a thing like abortion, which is so obvious. I would be lying to you if I said I ever felt like I saw some man get riled up about abortion rights. I just haven't. But when it comes to sexual liberation, holy shit, men will come out the fucking woodworks to tell me why I'm wrong about this and that and this and that, and women can do what they want. And if I want to choke women, if I want to strangle women, that's their right. They told me they want to be strangled. They told me they want to be abused. They told me they wanted to be fucking put in a garbage bag and buried 6 feet below the earth for me to come back a week later and excavate them. And like, what? Like, get off my butt. I hate you. Anyway, I think that that's awfully suspicious. And to speak of this polar opposite end of the spectrum, where I'm saying the problem already exists, this problem of modesty, this is an idea that I think a lot of people don't think about. Because, like, if I come out with some of these sorts of criticisms, which I often do, of this narrative that comes around sexual liberation, a lot of people have essentially likened myself and women like me to Puritans, which I just think is hilarious because first of all, I hate Jesus. Second of all, I will show my butthole to anybody that asks for free. I don't even charge money. I'll show you my fucking butthole, especially if it proves to you that I'm not no fucking Puritan. I could give a fuck. You'll get this fucking butthole. I don't give a fuck. It's not about nudity or anything. Not about that. But this idea of modesty, I think, is patriarchal in and of itself in a way that is truly sinister. Because the concept of modesty, in my opinion, it is a concept that puts accountability on women for conditions that men created, what is modesty describing? It's supposed to describe an attitude that women have about themselves, and how they interact with the outside world. So you say a woman dresses modestly, myself, I'm a perfect example. I dress modestly. I wear big fucking sweatpants and sweatshirts, that's technically modest in the sense it covers me up. I don't do this necessarily because I feel like showing my butthole or my titties is offensive and immoral, because like I just said, I don't give a fuck, and I'll show all of you my fucking butthole and my titties. First of all, I'm naked in multiple films, okay? Look them up. Secondly, I don't give a fuck. You know why women are modest? You know why women have even had to come up with a term like modest? Because they're hiding from the predatory gaze of these fucking men out here. Women didn't just decide, you know what? I think that covering my titties is modest and good and moral. No, women noticed, and women were told by men that, hey, we're staring at your titties and I want to fuck you up and I want to fuck you and oh, you're so hot, blah, blah. And women are like, oh shit, I want to put a shirt on because this sucks. That's why modesty exists, and this is why I don't like it as a concept at all, because as a concept it's used in such a way where we say the woman is modest. The woman is enacting the modesty, but I don't think that that's an accurate or a good or a feminist way to conceptualize exactly what's happening here. Women aren't modest. Women are hiding. That's what modesty is. It's not something that arises out of nowhere. You don't just choose by yourself to be modest, like I'm saying. Modesty is a concept that exists and was put onto us and described as a thing that we possess and have some control over when we really don't. I mean, it's a reactionary mode. Being modest is largely reactionary. If men weren't staring at us and committing all these acts of sexual harassment and assault and violence against us, there would be no need for a thing like quote unquote modesty. We could all be running around out here butt naked, and wouldn't that be nice, huh? We could all see each other's buttholes. I think that would be great. But we can't. Not because women want to be Puritans and modest, you fucking sexist. It's because they're hiding from you fucking sickos out here, literally everywhere. Literally committing so many acts of sexual violence against women. It's insane. And I think it's hard to even, the scale of it is so massive that I truly think it's hard for men to conceptualize what it's like. And this is why I don't hold them entirely accountable, but also why I don't depend on them for getting anything done with regards to feminism, and why I think it's our responsibility as women to get shit done, Because as they can't understand the scale of the problem, they're not going to understand the scale of what needs to happen to address it. I mean, any woman listening to this knows, every time you go out the house, you should be ready to have some sort of encounter with a man that's uncomfortable. It's pretty much just par for the course, No matter what you're wearing, what you're doing, some fucking creep at the gas station is gonna say something, he's gonna stare, he's gonna something, who fucking knows? Yeah, you'll get an email from some guy you met once 20 years ago that's like, oh, I'm thinking about you. Literally, just everything. You want to watch Serena Williams on TV? Cool. You're going to see someone be like, ooh, that ass. Literally nothing. I can interact with nothing without having to be reminded I'm a woman and I live in this bullshit. I'm going to show you all my butthole. So that's my problem with this sexual liberation thing that emerges. But either way, to think of trying to find the solution that best aligns with our goal of achieving the goal of this thing we define feminism as, which is the socio-political organized activity on behalf of women's rights and interests. How does this relate to sexual liberation as a concept? Because this is part of the rift that divides second wave feminism in such a dramatic way that it ultimately kind of evaporates in many ways. I would say that the idea of sexual liberation, I mean, I don't even think it can really be understood like as political. I mean, it can in a certain way, because I think these concepts like largely govern how we interact with, like, institutions, political institutions like monogamy and child rearing and all sorts of things. But beyond this, like, I mean, what are the arguments usually made for why myself, I'm criticized by mostly men, not women, I'm telling you, seriously, mostly men, when I want to speak out against a thing like what I find to be the overwhelmingly misogynistic nature of pornography, What are the arguments? The only arguments that I feel are ever leveraged against me are that some women like it. Like, okay, that's great. Like, I'm glad they like it. I would hope that these women are not doing this because they don't like it. I mean, that would be terrible. I hope to God they like it. Please like it. Like, I don't want to, I can't stand any more bullshit. I hope that they like it. But this doesn't have anything to do with feminism as a political movement, does it? Like, what does liking something have to do with anything? Because like we were saying before, even in the first wave of feminism, when women were fighting for the right to fucking vote, there was women being like, so what? I don't need to vote. I'm fine. I like it. I like it here. I don't care. I like it. It's like, well, what are we supposed to do with that? Of course, feminism can never literally unite every woman on the face of the fucking planet. That's just impossible. I mean, how many women are there now? 3.5 billion? This is not possible. So, like, how do we navigate this process, My personal idea is that when it comes to sexual liberation, if we want to do the thing that truly liberates all women in the realm of sexuality, I think what we need to do first and foremost, and this is just my idea, okay? I don't know if this is good strategy, but this is how I feel and what I desire for myself and for other women. I think that the thing that really needs to happen is women need to be liberated from sexuality. I want to exist as a being that is not even considered in proximity to my sexuality, Whether or not I like it, whether or not I'm considered Puritan or prude or openly sexual, I just want to exist as fucking Bethany, the weird person that does weird stuff from New Jersey, I don't want people to even consider my sexuality unless, we like go on a date or something, I don't want this, but I think it's undeniable that women are like trapped in this. Like I was just saying, you can't expect to even leave your fucking house without some guy reminding you that you are essentially a sexual commodity and men see you this way, I think for women to be truly sexually liberated, we need to be liberated from this reality where we're constantly reminded over and over again by men and also by each other that ultimately the value of us as women is intrinsically linked in the minds of men to our sexuality and our sexual worth. I don't want this. I want women to be liberated from this reality, I think it's important. And to speak about like pornography specifically, this is something like okay. I think that I when speaking about pornography, like, again, when I try to say that the overwhelming majority of pornographic content is misogynistic, the only rebuttal anybody ever really raises to me is the one I already said, that some women like it. And for me, this is insufficient, I'm not going to try to make them dislike it. That is outside the realm of my control or my interests or my goals as a feminist, I don't care. Like, women should be allowed to do and like and participate in whatever the fuck they want. My problem is that we have created this narrative in mainstream feminism where women are expected to embrace pornography as a thing that's empowering, and we're supposed to feel empowered by it because it is sexually liberating. And I hope I've just described to you why myself personally, and I think many women agree with me, well, I know they have or do because I speak with them all the time, many women don't desire this, Many of us feel sexually liberated. I don't have hang-ups. I just told you, I'll show you my fucking butthole. I'll show anyone my butthole. I don't have a hang-up about my sexuality. What my hang-up is at this point is I am sick of living in a culture where I am constantly reminded that most people, not just men, women too, we are not exempt from these forces of socialization that are so fucking powerful. We even see ourselves as sexual commodities, and it's like a Margaret Atwood quote that I read once that like freaked me out, where she basically says like, we are our own voyeurs. I feel like that's so true. Even a person like myself who hypothetically does not place some sort of value on a thing like physical beauty in a woman, I know that it doesn't really mean anything. Even me, I feel like I've been so brainwashed from the time that I was like a child until now that like it's still even hard for me to like, see women in a way that I feel is like truly not patriarchal in and of itself and not misogynistic, Like, we're taught to value youth in women and stuff, I feel like even though I've been a feminist for such a long time, it's only recently where I feel like I've only started to like see older women without feeling this sense of like sadness, like, oh, I bet she used to be pretty, like I'm starting finally after being a crazy fucking feminist for however fucking long now, I'm finally just now starting to see older women like in a way that I feel is more respectful, Isn't that crazy? If it's so hard for fucking me to undo the brainwashing, how hard is it for everybody else? Especially people that don't even like feminists. Like, what the fuck? We're fucked. This issue is fucked. It's heavy. But anyway, so let's go back to pornography for a second, because this is something I've said a few times, and I feel like it's a thing that some women have argued for. I don't know enough about. Andrea Dworkin is a woman, a famous second wave feminist that has that actually got some legislation passed in this sort of arena. But apart from her, I'm not sure entirely who else has been successful here. But this is my argument and my proposition, because I'm a solutions bitch. I don't like to just sit around and fucking fight all day. I have solutions. Just like I propose some sort of hypothetical solution to the sexual liberation puzzle, I'm about to propose another one that I've already proposed on social media various times. But I think that this is a compelling argument, and if it's not, I would like to hear why. I'm someone that believes that clearly, if feminism is a political movement, the justification that some women enjoy a thing like pornography, which I would say the overwhelming majority of people consider to be incredibly misogynistic, that's not justification enough for why we should all celebrate it, clearly, So that in and of itself is a problem, because already this it's ridiculous to me, but this opinion in and of itself has become controversial. It's like, what? Please. But beyond this, I think that the issue actually needs to be like taken care of. And I should also say, because this is important before I get into my arguments for how to strategize here, I don't think there's anything implicitly wrong about pornography in and of itself, obviously. I don't give a fuck about nudity. There's nothing implicitly wrong or misogynistic with filming naked people boinking. Absolutely not. Who cares? It's just naked people boinking. Not a big deal. But the issue is that how, as we exist in a patriarchy, so we, it's not that hard to see how this happened. Porn, the specific content we see in porn and the overwhelmingly popular and the majority of the content is incredibly, incredibly misogynistic. And if you tell me it isn't, I mean, I think you're an idiot. Like, it's just not even rational. There's no way to even rationalize it. Go to any main porn site right now, and what do you see? It's just like, dumb whore gets stuffed by 5 black cocks. I mean, that's another thing. It's super racist as well. And it's just like, dumb slut fucking my stupid sister while she's sleeping. Fucking my mom while my dad's not home. Underage and teenager are like such big categories. Last time I went, I wanted to post this online, but I felt I would get in trouble. Last time I visited Pornhub, there was an ad in the banner that was seriously, I forget the name of it. It was like Little Girlfriends. Like, it was obviously trying to be like, look, little underage girls. This girl seriously looked like she was 8. Like, I don't even know if I believe it was an 18-year-old that looked underage. It was either a real girl that was in her underage, or it was photoshopped, and that's how they got away with it. But it was a child. It wasn't like, oh, she's ambiguous looking. It literally looked like an 8-year-old. It was so fucked up. And it was on the main page of fucking Pornhub. Like, are you kidding me? You have to go out of your way to find the stuff that is not incredibly, like, devastating. You want to find some porn where, like, women are not just being absolutely brutalized and called dumb whores and dumb bitches and dumb sluts, and you're fucking your sister and your mom and everyone and kidnapping this one and forcing this on this one. Like, you have to go out of your way. And even when you find that content, a lot of that content in and of itself is questionable. Like, the bar is literally so fucking low. Even lesbian porn, you want to look at lesbian porn, like, you better find a website that actually makes it, because even the lesbian porn on, like, fucking Pornhub and shit is just, like, totally some fucking heterosexual dude's fantasy of what lesbians are. And that's why halfway through half of those videos, some dude pops up and just fucks both of them. It's not lesbian porn. Like, what the fuck? Ah! Anyway, so because this content is so misogynistic, in my opinion, I believe that women who do not want to be witness to this should be legally protected from such materials. Because the way I see it, all of this material functions the same exact way as hate speech. Because hate speech does exactly this. What is hate speech? I'll look up the definition just so we have the clear definition. Hate speech, hate speech, hate speech, hate speech. Where are you, hate speech? Where are you, hate speech? Where can I find you? Okay, here we go. Hate speech. Speech, gestures, conduct, writing, or displays that incite violence or prejudicial actions against a group or individuals on the basis of their membership in the group. If porn doesn't fit that definition, what does? Like, seriously, I don't see overwhelmingly, like, anti-male porn. Dumb male gets stuffed with 5 cocks like the stupid bitch that he is, or something. Maybe in gay porn or something too, but a lot of gay porn, I would say, is also enacting misogyny in its own way, but I won't talk about that. But, like, a thing with, like, even like women humiliating men porn is like, it's so clearly like some patriarchal fantasy. You're not really seeing the woman as like some agent of anything. She's just a stand-in for your sexual fantasy or whatever. It's not really like she's dominating you in any way, except for this scene where you are really in total control. I mean, you're only here to participate as a masturbator. But this, I think that all this content functions like hate speech. It's pretty much just propaganda against women. And I think that women should have the right to not have to be witness to it. And I also am somebody who does not believe in censorship at all. I don't believe in banning porn. I don't believe in banning hate speech. I'm someone who very much believes in free speech or whatever. For no other reason than that, well, because we have it already, and fuck it, I don't want to get rid of that shit either. Because you think a thing is bad today, tomorrow someone says you're bad, you know? I think even things like hate speech should be protected under free speech. So the point of having even such a classification, though, is because we still would be given protections as women, you know? Like, hate speech is legal in the United States, right? But there's a reason that things like hate speech are strictly not tolerated on certain platforms, or at least they put this forward. Of course, it still gets through, you know. To give Twitter as an example, like Twitter, I'm pretty sure has like a no hate speech policy. Of course, there's tons of hate speech on Twitter, but when it arises, sometimes you do have some sort of like an argument. You have some sort of like a weapon, quote unquote, for how you can try to protect yourself from this kind of content. And because, certain things are generally regarded by the public as hate speech, you also just see an attitude where, you know, certain like institutions will be like famously like disavowed because it's supposed to be a hub of hate speech. Look at a website like 4chan, you know, like 4chan is, they go through so many peaks and valleys and how, like, the public perceives them. But they're a site that I would say in the past 4 years especially have been come to be regarded by the public as, like, a hotbed of hate speech. And, you know, they're publicly disavowed and stuff. Because there really is, like, a lot of fucking racism and terrible shit on there, you know. I think, too, like, if the public just even started to adopt this idea, started to understand that this kind of content being out in the world for women to bear witness to it, like literally at any moment unannounced, even, you know, scrolling social media. It's like just today I was scrolling fucking Twitter trying to read the news and some thing pops up like, oh, I want to get it like this or something. And it looked like simulated rape. Like, why do I have to see this? Why is this allowed? And no, everyone's just like, ooh, that's hot. Like, you're all fucking brainwashed. All of you. Myself too. I'm brainwashed too. I'm not just trying to say you're brainwashed and I'm not. Like, I'm fucked up too. This shit did a number on me. You know how distressed I am inside of here? Inside of myself? Distressed. Anyway, I think that starting to fight for these kinds of things, because like I said, I'm a solutions bitch. If you agree with what I'm putting forward here, if you agree that women should have the right to not have to bear witness to this kind of incredibly misogynistic material, and also for men to make a joke out of it all the fucking time, you need to recognize that all women are affected by the presence of this material and this culture that exists where this material is fucking everywhere. I don't want to ban it. I want to send it back to the fucking basement with all the other hate speech, you know? Of course it pops up here and there, sometimes in incredible ways. I mean, the past 4 years has been a fucking hate speech extravaganza for all different types of demographics, you know? But still, to classify it as such would be a step forward. The fact that even like so-called leftist men who hate women just as much as conservative men, by the way, I don't care what the fuck they say, they're just creepier with it. They fucking will call me anti-feminist if they're like, oh, you don't like porn? Well, then you want sex workers to die. Like, bitch, are you kidding me? I want you to die. I don't want them to die. I want them to come here and hang out with me and you die. That's what I want. I like them. I'm here for them. I'm not here for you. Fuck you. This is not about you. Stay the fuck out of it, men. Sometimes men ask me what they can do to participate. I would say in conversations like this, don't. That's what you can do. Shut the fuck up. That's my suggestion if you're asking me for one. But anyway, I could go on forever. I think that this content functions as hate speech, and women have the right and should fight for the right to not have to be subject to it. Also, things like, strip clubs. Why is there a strip club in every fucking town? It's literally a zoo for women. I myself was a stripper for many years in many clubs in many states, and I had never seen one male strip club in all of my experience as a stripper. Never, ever. When I worked in Vegas, there was one strip club that had men too. That's it. But they also had women. It wasn't a male strip club. The only time I've ever heard of male strippers is like women calling them for their bachelor parties. Which, like, whatever, cute, fun. No one's getting hurt. And the men they don't seem like they feel demoralized. But if they do, we should listen to them too. If there was a strip club for men in or a strip club of naked men in every town too, of course, I would see this as less of a problem. But it doesn't exist. That's the problem. The problem with all this shit is it's so one-sided. All of it. And this is my other argument. You can't say that things like sex work are going to liberate the female class. And this is why ultimately I don't think that it is feminist. It's feminist that we care about the safety of these women and make sure that they're protected, because whether or not we like it, the sex industry is very real and many women are very vulnerable in these institutions, and it's our duty to protect them, especially the most vulnerable of them, who I think often get completely ignored in these kinds of conversations, but I'll go there in a second. But it can't be understood as a political a thing like porn and stripping and prostitution. These I don't think align with the goals of female liberation, because as a political movement, we need political independence. All of these things I just listed rely on a male consumer base. Like, it promotes our economic dependence on men, which I think is an argument that even people who feel like this or that way about the feelings part of all this stuff I just described, how it's like hate speech, you don't even have to agree with any of that to agree, I think, with this point that how can a thing be liberating women if essentially it promotes our economic dependence on men? Because women aren't the people primarily buying these sorts of materials. Women aren't the primary consumers of porn, not even close. They're not the primary consumers of strip club services, of prostitutes, of Snapchats, of OnlyFans, of all this. The clientele base is overwhelmingly male. And from my experience as a stripper, I will tell you, I don't know how it works on the internet. I've never done all the nude stuff and stuff. But as a stripper, oh my God, not only are they men, they are the most misogynistic men you will ever meet in your fucking life. I have never been spoken to so fucking disrespectfully and like I'm a fucking dog here. I just exist to suck dick and get dicks hard, as I have been spoken to in strip clubs. Like, these men fucking hate us. Seriously. And anyone who says otherwise is a fucking liar. I don't care. I'm so over it. I'm so over people fucking lying. It's a lie. And a lot of people say here too, well, we just got to make more male strip clubs for women or whatever. It's no, that's not going to work, because honestly, women don't want it. We just don't. We don't see men the way men see us. We judge them, I think, in a way that is a lot more respectful of their reality. And look, I'm not saying we're implicitly better or anything, but women, I think, have come to appreciate men more than we've come to even appreciate ourselves. We see men, I think, in many instances as more human than we are. And so I don't think a lot of us desire things like I'm sure, like, I mean, a male strip club would be fun as shit, I guess. But I don't envision myself going there and getting horny. I think I'd just be laughing. I'd probably be on a ton of acid. I'd want to show my butthole too. Maybe we could like line our buttholes up and they touch. That sounds fun. But like, I can't see myself like getting horny at a strip club. I mean, can you, women? Like a man strip club? I don't know. That's just maybe. I don't know. Shit. Maybe it feels like jungle themed, and I'm alone. Not with a bunch of men just like in their little fucking zebra thongs. Like, I don't fucking know. I just don't see men that way. I would think it's unattractive. Like, why are you dancing around like a little fucking monkey in the zoo? I don't like it. Because I see you as a human, you know. I don't think that a lot of women have the same benefit. That's why I say I think a lot of these men that go to these strip clubs, they are able to get aroused and see it as this incredibly pleasurable experience because they don't see us as people. I mean, in this venue, I'm not saying all men don't see us as people, though I wonder. But, you know, like, I think a lot of women cannot conceptualize getting horny in some environment with men doing this because we respect men too much. It's like, it would be unattractive to see a man walk around like a fucking freak like that. Just like, be like, ooh, look at my butt. It's jiggling. Like, okay, who are you, guy? I want to talk about Kierkegaard. Anyway. So yeah, no matter what kind of arguments can be made about feelings, I think that you have to offer a justification here for why we as women and as feminists should embrace sex work as a thing to be overcome. Not overcome, a thing to be celebrated, because unless you can convince me that the consumer base of this stuff is going to inexplicably turn like 50-50 men and women or something, or more women, then just like from a more neutral, unaffected standpoint, like I don't see how this could liberate women. Or I don't want to be economically dependent on men. Isn't that part of our problem? We're reliant on men for so much. We need to liberate ourselves and create industries where we support each other, and also just become involved in industries that I think are not incredibly, don't have crazy gender disparities either which way. You know, I think that's a way that we can truly gain some sort of economic independence. And I think that our economic independence is very important when considering our political liberation. Shit. Okay. So, I was going through the waves of feminism. I've been speaking for a long time. I knew this would go on forever. I'm sorry. I hope it's okay. But I want to speak about the third wave real quick, because this is like part of, I think it puts into perspective like maybe how we found ourselves here and what's going on for those who might be unfamiliar. So basically, like, the second wave of feminism kind of dissolves, like I said, amidst this like conflict that exists between radical feminists, liberal feminists, also white versus black feminists. There's so much conflict here. And again, to speak of race, I feel like there's like again, just similar in the first wave, again at the end of second wave feminism, there's this like little fucking bloom of black feminist activity where they're writing some of their most like seminal works. I mean, Bell Hooks mostly wrote in like the early 80s, I believe. Let's look it up real quick. But again, the second wave of feminism is said to end right around the feminist sex wars, when the liberal feminists and the radical feminists couldn't fucking stand each other no more. But black feminists were writing some works that would become like super seminal to the history of black feminism, and one of them is Alice Walker, who is the famous inventor of womanism and also the author of the book The Color Purple, which a lot of people have at least seen the movie for if you haven't read the book. And Alice Walker is a radical feminist, and it's really interesting learning about this history, which I did not know about until this past year because I was reading about the waves of feminism. it's Alice Walker's daughter, Rebecca Walker, who coins the term third wave feminism in 1995, I believe. Sorry, I'm like literally Googling it as I'm sitting here, but I think I got most of these pretty much right. And it's so interesting, and I feel like everybody who's interested, please find some of these interviews that Rebecca Walker does, specifically speaking about her mother, Alice. There was one on NPR, I believe. I think it's 1992 is when Rebecca coins third wave feminism, and she's the daughter of Alice Walker, who is a famous second wave feminist, like I just said. Rebecca's perspective on feminism is like so interesting, and when you read it, it's crazy. Like, she basically almost is speaking out of this rebellious attitude she has towards her mother. Like, she is angry, and in many ways, like, her philosophy of feminism is very reactionary. I'm hesitant to call it that because I sympathize like deeply with her and what she says, and this is why I say, like, please look it up, because it's just fascinating, really. She feels like, you know, being witness to all of Alice Walker's feminist theory in the second wave, where Alice was saying things like, you know, being a mother does not make her feel fulfilled. Having a family is not fulfilling for her. Like, I think she gives a specific example of like a writing from Alice where she basically describes how, like, it almost sounds like she says she regrets having children, which I imagine is devastating for Rebecca to try to interact with, you know, as her daughter. And Rebecca is clearly, like, upset with Alice. I don't believe that they even speak or they stop speaking. I'm not sure if Alice is still alive, but it was, like, bitter. It wasn't just like, oh, here's my critique of my mom, but I'm gonna go see her on Christmas. No, it's like, we don't talk. Like, we don't fucking speak. And her idea is essentially that, like, you know, women should be able to do whatever they want. And if what I want to do is to be a mother, if what I want to do is to be domestic, if I want to fill the stereotype of womanhood, I will. And she even says some things that, I mean, it sounds super problematic to me. She says things like, you know, the feminists, like, of the second wave were like these hairy kind of looking, like, I don't know if she said lesbians. I don't want to ascribe that to her. It wasn't homophobic or anything. But she basically calls, like, in one thing I read, she calls second wave feminists, like, hairy and ugly, and, like, she wanted to make feminism sexy. Like, it kind of sounds like some pick-me stuff. But I'm not going to put that all on her. Like, for one, I'm sympathetic to what she's saying. Like, it feels like it makes sense, you know? You're this daughter of this famous feminist thinker, and you're seeing that she's, like, telling the world things, like, it seems to you at least, like, I didn't even want a daughter, something like this, you know? So of course it makes sense that now Alice comes and is like, if women want to have daughters, if they want to lead lives of domesticity, we should be allowed to, you know? And that's something I absolutely agree with on an ideological level, but I'm not sure it works as a thing that fulfills the goals of feminism as a political movement. But Alice, I mean, this is only one part of her philosophy. Alice Walker's theory on feminism also has much to do with intersectionality and how feminism affects and sexism affects Black women in particular. And I think that this is, like, the best thing to come out of this emergence of the third wave, you know? Basically, like, a call to arms for women to, like, start fucking paying attention to what Black women have been trying to tell us since, like, 1870 with Sojourner Truth, you know, and listen to them and stop assuming that the way that they experience sexism is the way that we experience it. Like, our experiences of sexism are fundamentally different, but also not fundamentally, I won't say that. I don't believe they're fundamentally different, but they are different in many of their specific incarnations. But they are fundamentally similar, and this is what unites us as women, you know. But we can't really be united until, like, we really pay attention to what every group of women needs, you know. So this is a great idea and something that third wave feminism purports to embrace. But this is my problem. I kind of feel like, once again, black women are done a disservice here, because it's like, people, how often do you hear this kind of language repeated left and right? I'm intersectional. I care about black women. I care about women that aren't white, this and that. But do you see it? Do you see it anywhere? I don't fucking see it anywhere. I see people call other women, like me, you know, what I just said, like pornography, like, fucks and prostitution is a dangerous institution. People will be like, that's some white feminist rhetoric. Like, huh? How? You're literally selling nudes from your fucking high rise in Manhattan. What are you talking about? I never hear you talking about literally anything that affects black women or women that aren't white. Like, I mean, how about the fact there's a fucking serial killer targeting black prostitutes right now in Chicago? Where's that conversation? Instead, people want to fight on fucking Twitter all day about like fucking OnlyFans and like misogynist got my thing banned or whatever. It's like, yeah, that's misogyny. That's fucked up. But like, this feminism is supposed to be a political movement, you know? We can't just address the needs of like every woman specific thing. This is why I don't think that a thing like that works, you know. And then in the third wave, we have so many people claiming to care about things like what Rebecca Walker is saying we should care about, things like how race affects different demographics of women, and yet I don't see this put in action anywhere. I feel like their language is being co-opted, and this shouldn't be hard for anybody to imagine, because it happens to black women all the fucking time, you know. Their accomplishments and the ideas that they come up with are basically taken by other groups of people and then used for whatever purposes, you know. And I think that this is absolutely a thing that has happened in modern feminism. I always see people be like, they use this concept of white feminism, which is a thing that black women came up with to describe their experience of sexism and how it's so different from white women's experience of sexism. They came up with this concept of white feminism, and now we have all these fucking white men and women that are just like, I love sex work is the best, like, if you don't agree with me, like, you're a fucking fascist, die. Like, they're the ones screaming like, you're a white feminist to everybody, like, who wants to have actual discussions about what the fuck we're gonna do about the fact that women in actually marginalized communities are being targeted for violence and shit. Like, people act like sex work is just like selling nude photos on your phone. I don't even know. Does that even count as sex work? I don't even know. How? I mean, you're not having sex. You're selling nudes. Like, is being naked sex? I don't think so. Like, when I think of what we need to really address as feminists with sex work, it's like we need to address the fact that there's all these underage women literally on the streets in communities that, you know, are poverty stricken. And, you know, obviously our black population is affected disproportionately by poverty rates and violence and all of this. I mean, like, black women go missing in the hood, and the cops don't fucking look for them. Like, they fucking say, oh, she's probably on drugs, she was a runaway. Like, you know, I mean, the serial killer with the highest body count in America, I believe it was somewhere between 60 and 90 women. That's such a wide margin. I can't believe I don't even know. Either way, the rate is astronomical. He specifically targeted black women, and he specifically targeted black women that were prostituting on the streets, not women that had internet and whatever, women that were on the streets in this shit. He targeted them because he knew that the cops wouldn't do anything. They don't give a fuck. I mean, they barely give half a fuck when white women disappear as prostitutes on the street. You think they're gonna give a fuck if black women from like the south side of Chicago go missing? Of course fucking not. Serial killers target these women, like, on purpose, you know, and women who are cut off from the rest of us. Like, these women that a lot of people, these feminists that I think go around screaming like white feminists and you're not a feminist at everybody, these people I think are really, I mean, I don't know. It's like evil to me. I think it's sinister the way that they're trying to reframe narratives and center themselves in these narratives when, like, women are literally dying, especially black women and Native women, especially. Oh my God, I think Native women have the highest rates of like missing women. I think proportionately, like, they have some of the highest rates of missing women and rape in the whole nation. Like, but no one talks about them. You just co-opt the language to justify whatever you want to say about, shutting up people who are like against porn or something. And again, this also all goes back to literally the first thing I tried to say on here when we were talking about how like ideology is the most superficial way to interface with any of this stuff, I think it's easy, and nature follows the path of less resistance, right? To just become embroiled in these hot topics on things like Twitter and whatever social media, like you want to fight about. Twitter's banning pornography. Let's talk about it for 7 days. How what's the feminist thing? What do the women think? What is it? Banning porn? Like, oh my God, the ban porn hashtag. Have you people seen this? It's hilarious. It's a bunch of men fighting. I don't think I saw any woman say anything. Maybe like one Christian and like a Nazi. Like some Nazi lady and a Christian. I think those are the only ones I saw. I'm just assuming she's a Nazi. I don't know. She's like one of these alt-right people. Like, I don't see any women talking on this ban porn tag. It's just men fighting. Men on the right. What's the famous saying? Men on the right see women as private property, and men on the left see women as public property. Yes. I think that's so true. And I think that people should start to question the kinds of narratives that we're seeing emerge, because like I said, not starting to emerge. I actually think they're starting to be questioned more than ever, and that's part of why I feel comfortable right now not giving a fuck, showing you all my conceptual butthole, bearing my ass with this, because honestly, like a year ago, maybe a little longer than that, I don't think I would even feel comfortable saying some of this stuff, because I just don't want to deal with the trouble, but like I feel like everything I'm saying is so obvious. Like it's crazy to me that like you could even like, and if it's not obvious, it's obvious why it should be included in feminist discourse. You know what I'm saying? You could agree with nothing I'm saying, but I think most people can agree like this should be, if women like myself feel this way, and I'm definitely not the only woman that does, like, shouldn't this be included in discourse? But not that long ago, I feel like some of the things I've been saying here is just unacceptable. Don't do it. Don't do it. I've been going on for an hour and 41 minutes. I should probably stop. I'm looking at what I wrote here. I mean, I also wanted to be thorough in this and cover just about, like, everything I could think of in the broadest sense of whatever. Oh, wait, I didn't conclude. We're doing phenomenological reductions. So, this third wave of feminism, and some people have said we're in the fourth wave of feminism, actually, which I don't personally think we are in a fourth wave. I don't think we're even in a third wave, because I don't think, to answer the question that I put forth for myself, I don't think we have a feminist movement right now. All of these things I'm describing, third wave feminism, I don't think it's feminism. At least not what it's come to be. I wouldn't say that it's what has transpired and what's described as the third wave is strong enough to even classify it as a wave. I think that these ideas presented to us by Rebecca Walker in particular, I think as they relate to race, I think that these are things that we should really focus on, but actually focus on, not just take the words of other women and use them against whoever for your own fucking purposes. Because feminism is not a movement. It's not a self-help movement for women. It's not a how do I feel good movement for women. It's a political movement, you know? It's not about you. It's about us, bitch. If you don't want to be a part of us, leave. Leave. But don't tell us what we need to be doing. And also recognize this is not misogyny or internalized misogyny or whatever the fuck. I love you, bitch. My door will always be open for anyone, any woman that disagrees with me. My door is always open for you. Always. But we can't sit around and wait for you to jump on the fucking ship. Like, people are dying, Karen. They're dying. Just stop. Just stop. You don't want to be a part of what we're doing? Don't. Go do your thing. Go do it. No one's stopping you. Just please. Don't lie to people, and especially to young women and to girls, and tell them that what you're doing is feminism. Because it's just not. You're lying. You're lying. Unless you want to tell us what feminism means. You have some new definition. Because clearly it doesn't fit the one that we all agreed on. The socio-political organized activity on behalf of women's rights and interests. Not your individual rights and interests. Women's rights and interests. So what you don't have in common with all other women, just like write that off, you know? Not all other women, but like, you know, within groups. Like if your desire is individual to yourself, then just file that under to do later. To do not with feminism. To do after feminism. You know? You know? Shit. I'm looking at my notes. One other thing I wrote that I didn't speak about was hip hop. Because I do feel like, especially in black feminist history, especially, hip hop has so many amazing icons and role models for women, and for black women especially. And this is something that distresses me, and I've also spoken about, and I won't go too deep about. But I think a lot of people are not aware of this history, that when hip hop began, and especially like in the early 90s when it started to really like, you know, ramp up, there was so many more female MCs than we've been led to believe, you know. There's Bahamadia and Queen Latifah. There's Yo-Yo, who worked with Ice Cube. Lin Kuei K, who's one of my favorite rappers ever. Boss, obviously. Debret. Who else? There's really so many. I mean, Lady of Rage. And like these women were not necessarily sexually commodified. If anything, I mean, I think they still obviously existed in a patriarchal reality. Like a lot of their presentations seemed almost like what you would describe as the stereotype of like masculine dress code, for example. A lot of these women wore like baggy clothes and stuff. But and in that sense, maybe they did that, I think, probably on purpose in certain ways, you know, because if you want to hang with the men, you have to like basically like try to look like them, be with them, equalize on some level so they see you for your talent, you know. But I think it wasn't really until Lil' Kim happened, and I love Lil' Kim. Like, I fucking love Lil' Kim, so I'm not saying anything about this, but like, I think when Lil' Kim happened, studios realized like, oh, we can sell sex in rap too, you know. Let's do that instead. And then like it's almost like overnight all the female MCs disappeared and there's only one, and it's Lil' Kim for a bit, and then it's Nicki, the new female rapper who's also super sexy and basically stole Lil' Kim's soul. Oh wait, shit, never mind. Nicki, whatever. I like Nicki. Anyway, and then Cardi B, you know. But it's crazy because before this, like there was mad female MCs. It's like, so it makes me sad. But I'm glad to see this, like, slowly. It seems like we're breaking away from this. I feel like this year, especially, people are saying it's the year for women. We have Megan Thee Stallion and Rico Nasty and a bunch of different women. So that's great to see. But I just had to say that because, you know, for myself, too, like, these women are women that I really admire personally, their art, and I feel it's criminally underrated, and I want to share it at any opportunity. But anyway, I hope I've shared my ideas. I want to take questions, but I also don't. Like, I feel like someone's going to be like, so you fucking did this, or do you want people to die? And I'm going to have to, like, get into that. I don't think I'm going to do that. It's already 1:47, an hour and 47 minutes. This is the longest thing I've ever did. It feels kind of good to get that out. I have no idea if that was an enjoyable thing to listen to. I hope that I helped clarify some of my arguments here. Maybe now I can just refer people to this instead of going on and on about like this shit on social media. And I also think it's important to establish a tone, you know. Because on Twitter, you know, especially when I talk about feminist shit, I feel like people think I'm over here like, which I am, but my morning is also, I think, pretty jovial, you know. You have to take everything in stride and, you know, honestly, like, sexism is so, the scale of it is so massive to me, at a point it becomes almost funny. Like, it's absurdly large. It's like a clown glove. You know? Like, clown gloves are hilarious because why are they so fucking big? Your hand's not that big. That's kind of how I feel about sexism sometimes. Like, I'll feel sad, but then I'm like, bro, this is ridiculous. Like, are you serious? This is crazy. It's so big. It's like a clown glove. So that brings me joy. I hope that people got something from it. And more than anything, I hope people understand that I care because I care about women. Like, this is about women. And I feel like, you know, the hardest part for me to, like, access these conversations is I'm afraid that women who might participate in some of the things that, like, you know, these institutions that I'm critical of, I don't want women to feel like I'm judging them. I'm not. I'm really not judging them. Like, and I spent years in these institutions myself, and I don't feel guilty for it, and neither should anybody, you know. Like, you do what you gotta do, and a lot of what you do is a survival tactic, you know. But at the same time, like, I think if we recognize that feminism is a political movement and not just about us as individuals, and also think about the fact that there's so many young girls alive in the world now and that will come after us, you know, like, they deserve better than what we have, and I hope that they feel the same way. So I think that it is our responsibility to care and to care about people and women other than yourself, you know, and also in how we navigate, like, these different demographics of race. Like, start conversations with and listen to other women. Like, just, like, fucking, we have the internet, you know, fucking watch lectures and listen and start engaging too with, like, this history of feminism, which is pretty recent because, like I said, I mean, I'm someone who considers myself pretty well read and stuff. And just, like, reading feminist theory and stuff, getting into it for the first time in my life, I'm like, wow, I never thought of that. And I'm someone who likes to think I literally have thought of everything, but I haven't. And engaging with feminism in a real way has finally, like, made me start to realize this. And I think that part of why I was never really interested in engaging with feminism at all was because in many ways I didn't see it as an important thing. Like, I'm brainwashed too. I don't think that I thought it was important or interesting, and also that anything that could be said was probably something I've already thought about and come to my own conclusion, which is just so fucking vain and sexist of myself, really, against other women. So the more I engage with this kind of content, the more I'm very humbled by all that I am learning. But anyway, thank you for listening. This was cathartic, I guess. I don't feel better. I'm gonna still keep talking my shit, obviously. But anyway, join Phenomenology Club if you feel like talking further about this stuff, too. And other stuff. Last night we fought for over an hour about what a chair is. So it's not always heavy. I mean, that was heavy. That was more stressful than this conversation. But anyway, join the club. Links in the comments. Give me a like up. Subscribe. Yada fucking yada. Stay trippy. I'll talk to you all later. Goodbye.